Hey guys, today we're going to be reviewing all the operations with integers, how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide integers. We're going to start off by taking a look at the rules for addition and subtraction of integers. With all operations of integers, it's very, very important to pay attention to the signs of the numbers. Our first rule, if the signs are the same, we're going to add and keep the sign. If the signs are different, we're going to subtract and keep the sign of the number furthest from zero. When speaking about subtraction, we also have to keep in mind our special subtraction rule that we like to think about as a broken plus sign. This is a problem like 5 minus a negative 2. We read that as the opposite of negative 2, which the opposite of negative 2 would be a positive 2. So when we think about our broken plus sign, we think about two negatives that are right beside each other. It's a plus sign that fell apart, and we've got to put it back together. Now we're going to move on to our rules for multiplication and division. If the signs are the same, the answer is positive, and if the signs are different, the answer is negative. One thing that we have to really think about as we approach a problem with integers is decide which filing cabinet that we're going to look at. When we look at a problem, is it going to be an addition subtraction filing cabinet, or is it going to be a multiplication and division filing cabinet? Those two rules are completely different. Once you identify the type of problem that you're looking at, then you can go to that filing cabinet and pull out that rule. So our first example, we are actually going to be looking at all three of the different ways that we're responsible for integers. We are going to be able to need to look at the color counters, the rule, and the number line. So we're going to start off with our color counters. And looking at example number 1, we have a 5 plus a negative 8. So this is an addition subtraction problem. So I'm going to go to my addition subtraction filing cabinet and think about the rules that we do for that. But because we've got a color counter that we're going to use on this one, a visual is super helpful. So we have 5 positives. I'm going to draw 5 pluses. And then we have 8 negatives. Remember, we always look at the sign directly in front of the number. And now we can make our zero pairs. When we make zero pairs, we have to create a zero pair with 1 positive and 1 negative. And we can't make a zero pair with 2 positives. We can't make a zero with 2 negatives. It can only be created with a positive and a negative. And as I'm circling these zero pairs, you notice the number that I'm creating is a 0. Another way that we can remember that vocabulary of zero pair. When we circle, we make a 0. So we made 5 zero pairs in this situation, in this problem, and our remaining 3 negatives is our answer. So 5 plus a negative 8 equals a negative 3. Looking at number 2, we're applying the rule. Again, when we apply our rule, we have to think about the problem before we just immediately start working. You have to decide, am I looking at an addition subtraction problem, or am I looking at a multiplication division problem? So looking at this problem, because I see this plus sign, I know that it's going to be an addition subtraction problem. So then I have to think about my rule. I've got 1 positive and I've got 1 negative. So my signs are different. When my signs are different in addition and subtraction, I subtract and keep the sign of the one furthest from 0. So I'm going to subtract 15 and 10, and that gives me 5. And I'm going to keep the sign of the one furthest from 0, the one with the largest absolute value. And 15 has the larger absolute value, and it's positive. So that means my answer is positive 5. Next, I'm going to take a look at number 3, and we're going to look at this problem on a number line. So I'm going to draw my number line, and I have negatives and positives. So I'm going to start at 0, or put 0 right in the middle. And we always start our number line problem at 0. My first integer is negative 3. So I'm going to draw my arrow to negative 3. And it's really important that we draw a straight line when we're doing an addition subtraction problem to our first integer. Now, the second integer tells me what direction I'm going to go and how many places. So 4 is positive, so I'm going to go in the positive direction 4 places. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that brings me to a positive 1. So the solution to my problem, -3 plus 4, is a positive 1. Moving on to problem number 4, I have a parentheses here. This parentheses is really important because that -11, there's not a sign separating the -11 and the parentheses that it's right beside. When a number is smushed right up against a parentheses, that is an indicator of multiplication. In elementary school, you guys used an X for multiplication. Maybe you were introduced to the dot for multiplication. But not only are we moving away from the X for multiplication, but we're going to be using that dot or this parentheses. So I know that this is a multiplication problem. So I've got to go to my multiplication and division filing cabinet and use that rule. I'm going to look at my signs. 11 is negative and 4 is negative. My rule for multiplication, if the signs are the same, which this problem, the signs are the same, then my answer is going to be positive. So -11 times a -4, I just multiply the numbers like normal. It's a positive 44. Example number 5, again, this one is another multiplication problem, and this has the dot that I was just talking about to indicate that this is a multiplication problem. Because this is a multiplication problem, I'm going to go to my multiplication filing cabinet, and my rule for multiplication, if the signs are the same, the answer is positive. But in this instance, the signs are different, so the answer will be negative. And I'm going to multiply like normal. 8 times 8 is 64, so my answer is a -64. Moving on to number 6, there's a division problem. I know this is a division problem because I see the division sign. So I'm going to go to my division, multiplication and division rules. 25 is negative, 5 is negative. The signs are the same. In a multiplication and division, if the signs are the same, the answer is positive. And -25 divided by -5, signs are the same. It's going to give me a positive 5. And my last example, I have that double negative that I was talking about earlier with our special subtraction rule. I'm going to read this problem as 8 minus a -10. So I'm looking at the opposite of -10. Now, notice this one has a parentheses. However, the number, there's no number right here being smushed up to that parentheses. So this is not a multiplication problem. This is going to be an addition subtraction problem. I have two negatives beside each other. That turns into a positive. So now I just have the problem 8 plus 10. This is the same type of problem that I could have done in first grade. 8 plus 10. 8 is positive. 10 is positive. My signs are the same, so I'm going to add and keep my sign. 8 plus 10, it gives me 18.